Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So the 2025 Oscars were last night, and as is tradition here on my channel, I'm going to be diving into my reaction, my thoughts, my feelings on the winners and losers of the night. Yes, we're going to be taking a look at the ceremony itself, what I thought of the overall show, as well as the individual nominees and standout moments from the ceremony. So if that sounds fun to you guys, then please stay tuned. And of course, if you enjoy my awards coverage, then be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And speaking of awards coverage, in case you missed it, I did do a video a couple of weeks back diving into my reaction to the nominees for the 2025 Oscars, as well as the Golden Globes. There's a whole playlist that you guys can check out if you want to hear more. Actually, before we dive into the Oscars themselves, there's three things that I want to mention right up top. First of all, the Oscars, of course, marks the end of the 2024-2025 awards season circuit. And honestly, thank God. Honestly, thank God. Like, I feel just like that meme of that white lady saying the exact same thing, because this has been such a draining award season. I haven't even enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I was so sick and tired of all these people, sick and tired of every single one of them. I was unimpressed by the vast majority of the nominees. I was sick and tired of the headlines. I was sick and tired of this AI discussion, discrimination, hatred towards Mexican. Like, I was sick and tired of the discourse. It was not fun this time around. So I am so glad. I am so happy that it is over. So that's number one. That's number one that we have to mention right up top. Number two, I would just like to give a shout out to British television, especially ITV, because this year, for the first time in like a decade or more, I finally got to watch the Oscars for free. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Because whilst the Oscars air on ABC in the US, and I believe that's a network channel that you don't need to pay extra for, or maybe you need cable, I don't know how it works over there, sorry boo, but here in the UK, usually the Oscars are only available to people who have Sky or Sky Cinema in particular. They have all these different packages, and a way that you can get Sky without subscribing to Sky itself is by getting a Now TV subscription. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so, paying about £10 for 1 month of Now TV, and not just all of Now TV, but just the Sky Cinema portion of Now TV. Again, a very complicated model that I dislike, just so I could watch one night of the Oscars. Literally, like, I would get the subscription and then immediately cancel it just so I could watch the Oscars. But for the first time in about a decade, I didn't have to do that. I could watch the Oscars on ITV. And even though I didn't really care for the hosts and the coverage in between, I was just so happy and so grateful to get to watch the Oscars for free this time around. And we didn't have ads or anything, so that was great. So honestly, big ups to British television for doing that for me, because it felt like my birthday came early. And the third thing that I wanted to discuss before we dive into my thoughts on last night's ceremony, and this is a huge announcement, because now that we are officially done with the 2024-2025 awards season, this marks the halfway point of the decade. We have reached the halfway point of the 2020s, and in the spirit of this reflection, what better way to do this than with a special edition Genie Award? Yes! A Genie Award is coming your way very, very soon. We are going to be diving into the very best of what cinema has had to offer in the 2020s so far. So even though we didn't get a 2024 Genie Award, we will still be taking into consideration all of the releases from 2024, as well as 2023, 2022, 2021, and 2020, so that we can determine once and for all what the best of the best has been over the last 5 years. I'll have more details on this on the community tab in my channel, so keep an eye out. But I am so excited to be bringing you guys this special edition of the Genie Awards. Ooh! Okay, let's not get too carried away. First of all, we need to dive into last night's Oscars, starting us off with my thoughts on the host this time around, which was Conan O'Brien. This is gonna be an unpopular we're gonna have a few of these throughout this video, okay? Just fair warning. This is gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I've never found Conan O'Brien to be that funny. I've never found Conan O'Brien to be that funny. I know that Conan O'Brien is one of the more beloved comedians slash late night talk show hosts in the US, and I see why people like to distinguish him from the rest, like the Jimmies, right? The regular old Jimmies on the circuit, because his humor is a little bit drier and it's a little bit snarkier, and he does have an edge to him that the others don't. The others feel a little bit more wholesome and family and towing the company line, whereas he seems like the type that will kind of go outside of the box a little bit. He's a little bit zanier, and again that dry humor which appeals to some, you know, Americans who may feel like the regular kind of American humor doesn't suit them. But here's the thing, I'm a Brit, like I'm British, and so dry humor is kind of our speciality. So it's not enough for you to just be dry for me to be impressed. Like, you actually need to be really funny and good and excellent. And to me, Conan O'Brien is just like decent. Like, he would kind of just be okay by British standards if we're going off of the dryness of his humor. And so when people were really excited to see him host the Oscars, I was like, you know, it's gonna be slightly better than Jimmy Kimmel, although that's a very low bar to begin with. And God forbid we see Jimmy Fallon up there. So fine, this is better than those two options. But I'm not expecting something huge or phenomenal or fantastic. And I was right to keep my expectations low, because he was fine. Like, he was fine. There were some jokes that landed better than others. For instance, the Kendrick joke, which was written by this black man, I believe, who said as much on Twitter. So if he's to be believed, then well done to him, because it was a zany little joke. Some people are kind of sick of the Kendrick and Drake jokes, but I feel like now that we've completed awards season, we can hang them up to dry. But you know, it was a nice little sprinkling in there for the Oscars. Someone on Twitter even made the joke that the Drake and Kendrick beef is now halfway to an EGOT, which I found hilarious. So yeah, I'm glad that it was sprinkled in there, and Conan's delivery was solid, which is more than I can say for the vast majority of the people in that room. Why can't people read off of teleprompters? It's actually shocking, especially considering that they're actors and they work in the entertainment industry, and not only that, but they're the most successful of their ilk, and yet you can't read off of a teleprompter. Every single year this happens. I'm just like, rah. And to think that they actually have rehearsals and you're still flopping, like you're still unable to pronounce these words. And I'm not talking about Goldie Hawn, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. I'm not talking about Goldie Hawn, who has cataracts and actually could not see. That's a different matter, although that should have been sorted before the show itself. Like, she should have had some sort of accommodations to make up for the fact that she is visually impaired, but we move. Anyways, I'm not talking about her circumstances. I'm talking about these other venerated actors who genuinely just can't read off of a teleprompter and can't pronounce words properly during a live broadcast. I guess it's harder than it looks, but like, it seems really pathetic to me. Anyways, so Conan's delivery of that joke was pretty solid. There were some jokes that landed better than others, but overall I wouldn't put him down as like one of the greatest, you know, awards show hosts of all time. Like, he was just like, meh. I'm still of the belief that we need to throw away this old format entirely and bring back the showmanship, bring back the razzle dazzle of a ceremony that we've all been yearning for, because right now it just feels like a PowerPoint presentation with the various presenters coming in and poorly reading off of teleprompters and then showcasting some bits of material from the nominated projects before the awards are handed off. And it's just dry, it's just old. Let's bring back some performance, let's bring back some razzle dazzle. As I said, like, this is the entertainment industry, is it not? This is the best you can do for an award show celebrating the best of the very best in entertainment that year, that's pathetic to me. Like, let's just mix things up. Although speaking of some of the better jokes of the night, I would say my highlight was Bowen Yang. Bowen Yang is so freaking talented and excellent, okay? Bowen Yang was one of the presenters for the best costume design category, and he was talking about the costume design in Wicked, and they had this little bit where, you know, they were all supposed to be dressed in the costumes for their respective projects, but Bowen ended up being the only one dressed as his character in Wicked, and so he just looks like a little schoolboy standing next to all of these like models in Chanel and Dior, and that was hilarious. Like, again, his delivery was fantastic, the joke landed really well. I think it makes sense though, considering the fact that he's an SNL member, like he does this on the weekly, but still, like, big ups to him for actually making me laugh, because he had the best bit of the night. Although I did enjoy the Dune sandworm, not gonna lie. I did enjoy the Dune sandworm. The Dune sandworm delivered, okay, better than a lot of these other human presenters of the night. Now, one of the changes that they made for this year's ceremony was getting rid of the live performances of the Best Original Song nominees. Instead, we got some other random performances sprinkled throughout the ceremony. I mean, yes, we got Conan O'Brien's little "I'm not gonna waste time" mini performance, which was cute, but like a massive waste of time. Just a huge massive waste of time, and like I wasn't laughing as hard as y'all were, really. I was just like, we could have gotten more Cynthia, more anything, really. We could have gotten her on stage, like whatever. Anyways, we got that, but the show itself opened up with an incredible Wicked slash The Wiz slash Wizard of Oz medley by none other than Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. And you see, the thing is, this was a double-edged sword, because on the positive, wow, look at the talent on display. Look at the I will never cease to be amazed by talented people, by people who genuinely just have talents and gifts and just shine. You can see it. Like, some people will swear up and down that someone mediocre is talented. They will try and convince you, they will gaslight you, they'll be like, this person is the best, this person's incredible, and you're just sitting there thinking, no, actually. You're sitting there thinking, no, because I've seen the best, I've seen real talent, and I know what it looks like, so you can't fool me. When I see Ariana and Cynthia singing on stage, I'm saying to myself, like, oh yeah, this is reaffirming what I already knew. These women are talented. These women have gifts that they have honed. They've dedicated their whole lives to their crafts, and look at the results. It's incredible. That medley was phenomenal. What a beautiful ode to the world, the extended universe of The Wizard of Oz. I enjoyed every single second of it. Although if I was going to nitpick, as someone who's talentless in the space of singing, please, okay, humbly, if I was going to nitpick, I would say that Ariana has had some stronger performances in the past. Sis can sing, please. She's one of the best singers of her generation, but last night wasn't one of the best performances that she's given, especially at the beginning. She was a little bit shaky, but Cynthia just came out just shining. Like, she came out ready for war, and it was incredible. I loved the nod to The Wiz as well, especially considering that continued on with the performance from Queen Latifah during the Quincy Jones tribute. So just a beautiful through line throughout there. But Cynthia is just, I mean, her voice, it just has such clarity, and she has a heavenly voice that she's just honed, and it's just incredible. I don't know what to say. She's just an amazing singer and performer. She was Elphaba on that stage. She could do this at the West End or on Broadway. Like, she just proved why she was so perfect for that role, even though she wasn't actually dressed as Elphaba in that moment. But yeah, a beautiful way to start the ceremony, especially with all of the effects that they were surrounded by. Ariana had that rainbow above her that was just so incredible. And then you also had that strange but beautiful spherical stage stage where the orchestra and the conductor was, and that kind of opened up during Cynthia's portion of the performance. Just magnifique, really. Like, the standard was set so high, which brings me to that double-edged sword thing, because the standard was set so high at the beginning that the rest of the performances had a huge shoes to fill, and they largely failed to do so. Like, we started here when it came to the live performances, and then we just kept going downhill, which brings me to the second live performance that I wanted to highlight, which was the Bond tribute. Now, many of you would have seen the news that the Broccoli's have officially stepped away from their creative control of the Bond franchise. This was a franchise that was owned by them, by their family, and they've now sold it all off to Amazon. And so from here on in, Amazon's going to be calling the shots on the Bond franchise, which is a pretty big deal and a huge loss for British entertainment culture, I feel. I'm not overly invested in the Bond franchise. Those of you who have watched my Bond video will know exactly how I feel about the famous British spy. And if you haven't already, you can go ahead and check it out. It's a couple of years old, but I still stand by what I said. But I do still feel a little bit of loss and grief over the fact that now Jeff Bezos gets to call the shots on this iconic British character. Ew, gross, even worse than what it was before, actually. Who knows what's going to happen to Bond? But they saw it fit to pay tribute to the franchise, even though there's no upcoming film out, so like it felt a little bit odd and random, but whatever. And the tribute itself was a bit wonky. The tribute itself was a bit wonky. It was a bit wishy-washy. I mean, you had the clips from the various Bond films, and some of them felt quite out of date and like a bit ill, which speaks to many of the issues that I've had with the franchise. Go watch that video. You even had Halle Berry present the tribute itself, one of the most iconic Bond girls, and yeah, that's, you know, really nice. She looked absolutely stunning, but again, it's kind of like an icky franchise that's a product of its time. So yeah, I was just kind of cringing a little bit throughout some of those clips, and they didn't even play some of the worst ones, honestly, so that's saying something. But then we moved on to a kind of dance performance that weirdly enough starred Margaret Qualley. Good for her for showing off her dance moves. A bit random because she's never been in a Bond film and she has nothing to do with Bond, but I guess she looked like a Bond girl, although Ana de Armas was in the room and she was actually another Bond girl. But anyway, we moved. Maybe she didn't want to do it, and Margaret was up for the challenge and she looked great and the dancing was decent and I was intrigued. But then came along the new 3 Bond ladies giving us vocal performances of some of the most iconic Bond songs. Now, I am of course familiar with the trio of Lisa, Doja Cat and RAYE. More on that in a second. I'm familiar with this trio because of their new song Born Again, which was originally a RAYE track, but her stupid record label rejected it and said it would flop. Idiots. And so Lisa ended up purchasing it, and then she did her rendition and included Doja Cat, and it was a dream collaboration for her. But she also included RAYE, which I think was fantastic, and honestly just showed that Lisa didn't need to be there at all. Oh, sorry, you didn't come for a review of Born Again, but you're getting one anyways. That song hits. That song is fire. I've been playing it over and over again. Okay, I'm obsessed. But I have to say, and sorry to any Lisa fans watching this, Lisa is the weakest part of that song. Bless her for buying it and for making it as big as it is. Like, I appreciate that. But RAYE should have just had this song from start to finish with a cute little Doja Cat feature. Like, that would have just been perfect. The backing track is still mostly RAYE anyways. You can hear the depth of her voice. She's just a superior vocal performer. And so yeah, that song would have been better with just RAYE and Doja Cat. Sorry Lisa. And this opinion is why I wasn't so surprised that the live performances of the Bond songs ended up the way that they ended up. With Lisa giving the weakest vocal performance of Live and Let Die. I was actually impressed by Doja Cat. You know, she was actually singing Diamonds Are Forever. But that song is just so iconic, and you really do need to be a big, strong, soulful singer to really hit those notes. And Doja Cat just didn't have the range needed for that either. But she looked incredible, although I would have preferred a different hairstyle with that look, but fair on her. She went with the short waves. She looked amazing. It's just that there were times where she was a little bit off key. That was kind of distracting just a little bit. But then but then they saved my sister for last. RAYE came on stage to honestly save the day by giving the best vocal performance of this entire tribute. And like, of course, like I just said, like she's one of the best singers of our generation right now. I'm a huge RAYE fan, and so seeing her with her classic jazz aesthetic, the kind of short wavy hair and the long dress, and I don't know if she was barefoot this time around, but she had the mic. She had the mic cord wrapped around her shoulder. I knew she was about to get down and do business, and she delivered 100%. Now again, if I was to nitpick as someone who is untalented as a singer, please, if I was to nitpick humbly, I would say that I didn't love this rendition of Skyfall, mostly because there was more of an emphasis on stand tall rather than Skyfall itself. So if you remember, the song is "And we stand tall and face it all." I can't sing at all, like I said. But she put a lot of punch on the stand tall rather than the Skyfall, and I think the Skyfall part is the better part. I don't know how to explain it, but I didn't love the way that they kind of rewrote this version, but her vocal performance absolutely delivered. If she had just punched the Skyfall a bit harder, especially in the first verse, I think it would have made a bit more impact. But then in the last verse, where she had that long note and everyone stood up and gave her a standing ovation, yeah, that's why you get RAYE. That's why you get RAYE, and that's why you save her for last, and that's why you have her cover the Adele song, because that's when you know she means business. And I actually don't think it's a coincidence that they got RAYE to do this, because people have said for years now, ever since they saw Oscar-winning Tears, her live performance in the Royal Albert Hall, that she would be the perfect person to do the next James Bond song. Literally, it's under every single comment section of every single RAYE video if you go look. So I actually think that that's why they got her to do this, and she happens to be in this trio for Born Again, and so that's kind of how it came together. But that's just my little conspiracy theory as a RAYE fan. Okay guys, so now that I talked about the ceremony itself for much longer than I usually do, apologies, but it's time to get into the major winners of the night. And honestly, this is like the least interesting part. This is the least interesting part. Who cares? There were barely any surprises, and as I said in my previous videos, 2024 wasn't the strongest year for film anyway, so I didn't really have high hopes for any of these nominees, especially considering Dune Part 2 was shut out from a lot of the major awards from the very beginning. If you're not seriously considering Dune Part 2 as the best film of 2024, then like, what more do I have to say? What more do I have to say to you? Like, I've literally lost interest. But let's dive into it. So the big winner of the night was Anora, which ended up taking home Best Editing, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Picture. I had feared that this would happen when Anora started to pick up some of the tertiary awards that were going around in the last few weeks. They picked up a lot of SAG awards, picked up a lot of BAFTA awards, but that's not really relevant to the main Academy voting body. But it did help to kind of pick up the momentum of the film, I guess, especially during voting season. So it picked up all of these awards. I think it picked up the GGA award as well for the directors. So that meant that it started to become a lock, which was surprising, because before the huge AI scandals, you see what happens when you rely on AI too much, although not really. Again, we'll talk about it. But The Brutalist was the front runner for the longest time, but Anora kind of came in there and swept up all of the awards when all was said and done. I have a theory about how this happened, because I genuinely don't believe that Anora is the best film of 2024. I said in my What I've Been Watching, where I reviewed Anora briefly, that I was a little bit underwhelmed by that film, to be honest. I liked it well enough, especially the first 2/3, but the last third just kind of lost me a bit, and it was just really repetitive. But I think what happens here is that The Brutalist was a front runner, and it would have cleaned shop had it not been for that pesky AI scandal. But then we also had the actual second best film of 2024, Conclave, coming in and actually gaining momentum at the last minute, but not enough to take home the award. So I think it may have split the vote, and Anora may have ended up being enough people's second or third choice to end up winning overall. That's how I think this happened, just based off of the mathematics or the voting system that I don't really know too much about, to be fair. That's my theory on how it won Best Picture and how Mikey Madison ended up taking home the award for Best Actress. I think Fernando Torres and Demi Moore ended up splitting the vote, and enough people voted for Mikey in their second or third place slot that she ended up taking home the award somehow. But no matter how it happened, Anora ended up being the biggest winner of the night, with Mikey Madison defying all odds and snatching that Oscar away from Demi Moore's hands. It was kind of heartbreaking to see, not gonna lie. I was rooting for Demi. I think she did a phenomenal job in The Substance. Just incredible work, especially within the horror genre, which routinely gets ignored during awards season. So in that sense, she made it pretty far. I mean, further than Toni Collette or Lupita Nyong'o, who also deserve to get that recognition for their respective roles in the horror genre. But she didn't make the final stretch, unfortunately, which was kind of heartbreaking to see. And also kind of ironic, considering the plot of The Substance. Like, watching that play out in real life just hammers home how significant that story really is and how applicable it is to real life Hollywood. But now that we have our new Best Picture winner, I thought it'd be a fun idea to circle back to a tier list that I made in 2023, back when I was a good YouTuber. A tier list diving into the last 30 years of Oscar Best Picture winners. And I forgot to do this last year, actually, so we can do two at once. But here I have the final tier list that I landed on, spoiler alert. And now we get to add two new films to this tier list. Starting us off with last year's winner, Oppenheimer. Remember last year? Remember 2023 and 2024 when I had that one-sided beef of Christopher Nolan? Good times. Little did I know that it could get worse, and Sean Baker could come in and ruin my day. But anywho, when it comes to Oppenheimer, you know, distance makes the heart grow fonder. I'm not as much of a hater of Oppenheimer anymore, even though I do still stand by the fact that the third act is really such a drag. But like I said, the distance has made the heart grow fonder. So I'm going to put Oppenheimer at the end of the This Is Timeless Cinema S tier. That's right, I'm giving Oppenheimer its flowers 1 year too late, and it's falling at the end of the topmost category. But now let's take a look at where Anora would land, because as I said, I was slightly underwhelmed by that film. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't one of my favorites of last year, so it definitely wouldn't go into This Is Timeless Cinema. It wouldn't even go into It Did In Fact Give. I mean, hello, look at the films in these categories. Like, there's some tough competition here. Anora is such a weak Best Picture winner, in my opinion. I would be tempted to put it at Furrowed Brows in the Room, or Raised Brows and Wide Eyes in the Room. I don't think it was a raised brow situation, because people weren't overly surprised by its win. So I'm gonna put it in Furrowed Brows in the Room. But at the very end, after A Beautiful Mind, that's where the latest Best Picture winner, Anora, is going to go in my tier list. Okay, so now let's move on to Emilia Perez. Yeah, that was sticky situation. By the way, speaking of, I almost forgot that one of Conan's best jokes of last night was the Emilia Perez one, where he said that I think Anora had more F-bombs than Carla Sofia Gascon's PR person. I just butchered the delivery of that. Maybe it's harder than it looks. But that was actually a funny joke. So good on him for that one. But yeah, Emilia Perez was just like this huge, massive elephant in the room that no one really wanted to talk about or touch for too long. It would get claps here and there. I do think that there are actual admirers of that film. I mean, obviously, because it was nominated for a bunch of awards. So even though it's really, really unpopular on social media and people love to hate on it, people in the industry really love that film. And I think that's something that we just have to come to terms with. I mean, hell, I myself liked the film when I first watched it. I saw that it had issues, but I never thought that it would get hated on to this extent. I, for one, I'll put my hands up and say, I think El Mal was a bop. Like, I think the original song El Mal was a bop. I remember particularly enjoying it out of all of the very forgettable songs in that film. So I wasn't surprised that it ended up taking home the award for Best Original Song, especially in such a, again, weak-ass year. Although, even though I liked the song, fair enough, I did not expect the songwriter to start singing it in the middle of the ceremony. That was cringe as hell. Could have lived my whole life without hearing that. Then, of course, you had the major win for this film, and that was Zoe Saldana going home with her first ever Oscar after being nominated for the very first time for her work in Emilia Perez. And I agree with pretty much everyone's sentiment that, you know, she has worked in this industry for so long and being a part of such incredible projects, especially franchises, that it's shocking that she's never been nominated before. And it's really sad that she was overlooked, but it's a shame that she got rewarded for this particular project because it's one of the weakest in her filmography. Not quite Nina Simone weak, but still one of the less impressive ones. This was such a fine here you go ass award for Zoe Saldana. Like, although I must say, on the topic of Emilia Perez, I still am so angry and annoyed that Carla Sofia Gascon took that space as a nominee for Best Actress, even though she had no chance of winning. But the fact that she was even there as a nominee was so absurd and ridiculous, especially since I have since watched Hard Truths, and honestly, Marianne Jean-Baptiste should have been there. She should have been on that roster. She should have been on that list, and it is absurd and ridiculous and crazy that Carla Sofia Gascon was there instead. It just makes me sick to my stomach. But okay, cool. Now we move on to Best Actor, which went to Adrien Brody. This wasn't hugely surprising. He was kind of a front runner for the majority of awards season. We hoped that the AI scandal would kind of ruin his chances just a little bit, and maybe it did, who knows, but not enough for him to actually not take home the award. So he did end up winning last night, which was a shame. I really wanted Coleman Domingo or Ralph Fiennes to win. Either of those two would have just been like, yes, Jean's dreams have come true. But no, of course Hollywood wouldn't give me that. And so yeah, Adrien Brody took it home. Ugh. And I have several observations, okay, for this category. First of all, the return of my man. The return of my guy, Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy returned to present the award for Best Actor, and I just had the biggest smile on my face because I forgot that he would have to do that. I forgot that he would have to return to do that. You know, he is famously a recluse, like he doesn't do Hollywooding like the other girlies do. He wasn't even on the red carpet for the award. Like, I literally forgot that he would be attending, and most of the people in the room did, clearly. But he came out like a manifestation of my dreams. He came out onto the stage looking coy but serious, and he, you know, presented the award. He didn't stutter. You see you see how these other actors weren't able to read off of the teleprompter, but he was. That's because he's the best actor, duh. Anyway, so he didn't stutter or, you know, fumble with his words. He did a good job, and he presented the award for Best Actor. And then Adrien Brody won it, and that kind of dimmed my mood quite a bit, but not enough for me to not realize that this was a very significant reunion for for those of us who are Peaky Blinders fans, this was a very special reunion because it meant that Tommy Shelby himself had to hand over an Oscar to his great evil nemesis, Luca Changretta. If you watched Peaky Blinders, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was fun for me to notice as a fan. But other than that, it just went downhill from there. The second that Cillian Murphy stepped away from the spotlight, it went downhill because Adrien Brody opened his mouth and then never closed it again for a good 20 minutes. His speech was so long and pointless and lingering. They kept flashing to his partner who was milking every single second of the limelight. I was like, do we need to sit through all of this? Like, I couldn't even fast forward because it was a live broadcast, so I just had to put it on mute and keep it pushing. It was just so long and boring and ridiculous. Like, it had no point. And then the music played to kind of play him off, and he made this sassy comment of like, oh, I've done this before, this isn't my first rodeo. Which, why have they given him 2 Oscars? Why do they keep doing that? They did it to Emma Stone as well. Oscars, stop doing that, okay? But he was like, oh, this is my first rodeo, and he was like, I'll make it quick. But then he didn't make it he didn't make it quick, and more insultingly, he didn't make it interesting. He didn't make it poignant. He had nothing of interest or importance to say. He was just yammering on about people being kind to him and giving him respect, and quite frankly, it just came across as him being a jackass. Like, it came across as an asshole, and I just got annoyed by the end of that whole speech. So without me talking about it for too long, or as long as his speech was, I'll just say that in the end, I was disappointed that Ralph Fiennes or Common Domingo didn't win. I ended up disliking Adrien Brody more than I did before he won this award, and I did find it disrespectful that he ignored the music playing over him, demanded that they stop the music, and then said nothing of note about anything that's happening in the world other than let's just love each other and blah 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 blah. Like, boo, boring and pointless. And speaking of let's just love each other, that was a message that a lot of the winners of the night were sending through their speeches, although for the most part people just kept it personal and were just talking about how grateful they are to their friends and families and colleagues. But a lot of people were avoiding the huge ginormous elephants in the room. There was more than one, elephant in the room, but another one was, of course, the political tensions in the United States right now. There was no one really stepping up on the soapbox and talking about that, and quite frankly, I thought that was fine, because what do they have to say anyway? What do these people who can't speak without a script in front of them have to say anyway? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that was fine, and pretty much no one even dared to mention the war happening in Gaza until we got to Best Documentary, where No Other Land ended up winning. I was shocked and surprised that No Other Land won in this category, but I was really happy for that team. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but it seems like such a poignant and powerful and timely story to be told. But the fact that it ended up winning Best Documentary shows that more people in Hollywood have an issue, okay, against what's happening in the Middle East than they would care to say. They secretly have these beliefs. Secretly, they don't have the courage to wear a pin the way that Guy Pearce did, but they secretly have these beliefs, and the fact that this documentary won spoke volumes. But you know what was even louder was one of the documentary makers speaking out about the issues facing Palestinians today as part of his speech. The fact that he named the problem, the fact that he actually said what was going on. He even mentioned ethnic cleansing in a room full of, okay, you know, he made that very clear, and I thought that was a really powerful moment in the ceremony. So big ups to No Other Land for winning the documentary award, especially in this here year with everything going on. That was really phenomenal, and hopefully this documentary will eventually have a distributor in the US, but here in the UK it is going to be aired on Channel 4 if it hasn't already, and I hope that it's going to remain there so that I can finally get a chance to check it out. Although speaking of Best Documentary, I also wanted to mention Sound of the Coup d'Etat, which is another documentary that that was nominated, and I didn't even know it existed, but it's discussing the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, who was the first elected prime minister of Congo. Yes, the country that I'm from, Congo. How did I not know this documentary was a thing? I need to find a way to watch it immediately post haste, because I literally did not know it existed, and it is such a powerful and important story for my Congolese people, especially in light of what's happening in our country right now. So I need to make it a priority to find out where to watch this. And even though I'm really happy for No Other Land for winning, now that I know that this Congolese documentary exists, I'm kind of sad that it didn't win. Okay, so this video is turning out to be slightly longer than my usual reactions. I guess I had more to say on the Oscars than I thought. But let's just round out this video with a couple of stray thoughts here and there. Starting us off with the end of the quartet of actor winners, with Kieran Culkin winning Best Supporting Actor for Real Pain. I've already said that I don't feel like Kieran Culkin's performance was like mind-blowing, incredible, exceptional in A Real Pain. To me, he was kind of playing flavors of himself and Roman, which we've already seen and has already been rewarded. But you know, fine, people really loved his performance and thought it was amazing, whatever. Then next up for Best Animated Feature, Flo ended up taking home the award, and fine. Fine, whatever. I was disappointed that it didn't go to The Wild Robot. Many of you will know that I preferred that film over Flo. I did enjoy Flo, although at this point I'll probably never watch it again, because it's really been soured for me by a lot of the fans of Flo, who flooded my comment section with just insulting remarks. Like, and for what? For a film about a poorly animated cat and her Nintendogs animal friends? Like, please. I was so annoyed by a lot of these comments. They were so hateful and so misguided. I got called dumb, stupid, narrow-minded, everything but a child of God by these Flo fans just for preferring The Wild Robot. So at this point, I'm done. If your aim was to get me to appreciate this film more from your horrible comments, then you sucked and you failed, because now I strongly dislike it because of its association with your negative comments. So well done. But it's all done and dusted now. You got the Oscar, and now I never have to see or hear or think about this goddamn animated film ever again. Yay! And finally, we even got some wins for Wicked. Yes, unlike Barbie, Wicked actually ended up taking home some awards in the technical categories. I say unlike Barbie because it was a huge shame that even though Barbie was such a phenomenon and such a hit in 2023, and it was nominated in various categories, it ended up being overshadowed in the technical categories by Poor Things, and so didn't end up taking home any of those awards. But Wicked this time around absolutely swept in the technical categories, which I was really happy to see. And this of course included the win for Paul Tazewell, who ended up taking home the award for Best Costume Design, the first black man to do so. Yes, I mean, it's always bittersweet with these accomplishments, because first in like 100 years is crazy, but also huge congratulations to him. He seemed really overwhelmed, but he wholeheartedly deserves it because his costumes in Wicked were just phenomenal. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on the 2025 Oscars ceremony, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this whole shebang down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch you videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.